Scarlett Blade. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Silent Night, Memoirs of a Royal Guard, Chapter 18. Shaking my head, I sighed. What a shame. What is it? Iridescence asked from her bunk. My sister and her mare friend broke up. She's really upset about it, too. I explained as I read the letter on the table. Setting down a fresh sheet of parchment, I picked up a pencil in my mouth and started the response. Iridescence rose and came over. She slid the letter out to read it for herself. Normally they're private, but I had brought it up, so it seemed all right to let her see. Did she say why? She asked. I shook my head and tried to focus on my writing. The unicorn's expression darkened as she read on. Poor girl. They'd been together a while, too. Be sure you're extra nice to her in that letter. Maybe even take some time to go see her. I nodded in agreement and continued to scrawl across the parchment my condolences. One thing I had learned was that when these things happen, there is a litany of standard responses. There are other Pegasi in the sky. It is always darkest before Celestia's dawn. So forth. All of that sounded so forced to me. I certainly knew I wouldn't want to hear anything like that if Iridescence and I split up. While we contemplated the best response, there was a knock on the door. It was followed by a brief pause before the door opened. It was Captain Shining Armor. Usually he didn't knock. That was new. We stood at attention and I spit the pencil out onto the table. "Good evening, sir," I said. "Good evening to you, too," he replied, looking to where the pencil had landed. "Silent night. I wanted to put on a bit extra security for Princess Celestia tonight. Can you help me out?" A spot on Princess Celestia's housecart for the evening was a huge opportunity. I smiled and said, "That is most appreciated, Captain. May I ask, is there no pony else? You know I would never refuse if you were in need. But if some pony else can do it, I'd like to pass." I nodded to the letters on the table. I'm behind on writing to my sister, and she is in a bad spot. Plus, Iridescence and I have tickets to Hearthwarming Eve's play. I don't want to let her down. Shining Armor looked a little surprised. He shook his head and smiled. "Oh no, I wouldn't have trouble finding some pony. It's a huge career opportunity, and I wanted to offer it to you first. You've earned that." He tapped the table and nodded, "But family comes first. Have fun, you two." The door closed behind the captain, and Iridescence looked at me wide-eyed. "What?" I said. "You could have been on Princess Celestia's houseguard tonight. You just turned down something you've cared about your whole life." "Mares are confusing creatures." I tilted my head and said we had plans. You said I was supposed to meet you halfway. Quickly I leaned down to snag my pencil and started back to writing. Iridescence watched with a strange look on her face. Was it guilt? Guilt didn't make sense, but it looked like guilt. We could talk about that later. For now, Winter Spear was the most important pony to me. Maybe I should go see her. I had tons of holiday time due. Later that evening, Iridescence and I attended the Hearthwarming Eve play. The Canterlot production was the largest in all of Equestria, and getting tickets was hard. Being a Royal Guard, however, had its perks, and I was able to acquire 2 well in advance. We didn't have great seats, but they were what I could afford. That was my gift to Iridescence. Well, I guess the tickets and me not working security. She had gotten me a wonderful scarf. It was white and blue, like me, and really warm. I'm not certain what it was made out of, but if some pony would ask, I would say the softest love available. The scarf was also extra long, which meant I could share it with her. We sat together at the play with her hooves around my left foreleg. She still had that guilty look on her face, but I hoped the show would change that. The playbill had started, and Twilight Sparkle and the other elements of harmony would be taking their starring roles. I wasn't aware that they were actors, but I was still an exciting prospect. The lights fell and a dragon came out on stage to narrate. This was going to be a great evening. First a show, and then off to meet our friends. I slipped a hoof around Iridescence's shoulder, and we settled in for the show. "I'm not sure Commander Hurricane was that stubborn, is all I'm saying, I explained. Iridescence laughed softly as we walked, spoken like a true Pegasus warrior. It was creative license. Silent Night, all of the leaders were made to seem completely unreasonable. I suppose that's true. Still. I trailed off as we arrived to Runic's shop. The outside was completely done up in Hearthwarming Eve decoration. A sign outside read closed for private function. We headed on the inside and found ourselves in the holiday wonderland. Runic Vile did not do anything halfway. The shop was completely decked out in hearth-warming cheer. There were colorful streamers, hanging ornaments, and everything else you'd expect, plus some things you wouldn't. It appeared he had somehow glued fake icicles to the ceiling. At least I hope they were fake. Wow, Runic, this is just amazing, Iridescent said, and I nodded in agreement. Runic smiled. Thank you. I wanted it to feel special for our first Hearthwarming Eve together, just like my parents do back home. That was a nice gesture. We helped ourselves to some punch and chatted quietly. It wasn't long after that when the door opened and Crystal Wishes came in. Good evening, all, she said cheerfully. I hope no pony minds. I brought a friend. The more the merrier, Runic said earnestly. She had indeed. An earth pony walked in behind her. She was light pink, with a mauve mane, pulled up in a bun in the back. 2 curled strands hung by her ears in the front. Her cue mark was some sort of pink shoe, the kind dancers use, I thought at that time. Hello, every pony, she said softly, glancing around. This is Velvet Step. We've been friends since Phillies, and she is in town for the holidays, Crystal Wishes explained with a bright smile before going around the room with introductions. That is Silent Night, Iridescence, and Runic Vile. Pleased to meet you, I said, as we all exchanged casual pleasantries. Velvet looked like a pensive, but that didn't surprise me. She was being introduced to new ponies in a new place. She asked, is it true that Princess Luna may be coming? I won't know what to do if she does. It was true. Crystal Wishes and Princess Luna had hit it off pretty well. Iridescence too, of course. I was glad to see the princess was making friends. It made work weird sometimes, though. Crystal Wishes smiled and said, Don't worry, Velvet. She is sweet. I'm not sure if she'll be able to make it anyway. She has a lot of duties as a princess. Why don't we have some punch? I took that opportunity to chat with Runic. I was a bit excited. Runic, I got a gift for you, I stated. I don't know much about these things, but I think you'll like it. Runic tilted his head and asked, What is it? The gift. A rock was hidden in my scarf. I pulled it out and offered it to him. About 3 weeks ago, Princess Luna was on her balcony looking through her telescope. She saw something fall from the sky and pointed it out to me. I'm not exactly sure how, but she tracked it where it would land, and we went out to see it the next day. It was a rock that had fallen from the heavens. This is a piece. Runic's eyes went wide as he took the rock in both hooves, cradling it like he might a foal. You got me an extraterrestrial rock? He asked, tears welling in his eyes. I was pretty certain they were good tears, and I nodded. The moment I saw it, I thought of you, and Princess Luna allowed me to have it. I'm glad you... I grunted as Runic crushed me into a hug. I hugged him back. It was cool. We're family. With my vision starting to go black around the edges, he let go. I have something for you, too. Give me a second, though, he said, turning to go back to his shop. He set the rock down on the counter and brought out a small lockbox with a glass lid. Runic unlocked the box and set the stone in it. Securing it, he put it on the shelf right behind the counter in prime viewing space. I was proud that I had found the right gift. His gift for me, it seemed, was much larger. From the back room, Runic produced a long rectangular box wrapped in brilliant blue paper. He offered it to me, and I had to take it in both hooves. Whatever it was heavy. Thank you, I said, setting the box on the table. I tore the wrapping off and revealed a wooden box. Curiously, I pushed the lid off. Wow! I exclaimed, drawing the attention of everyone in the room. Typically, I'm not loud, but this was amazing. I made it, Runic said sheepishly. From the box, I pulled the most impressive sword I've ever seen. It was shiny and new, giving it a silver look. The hilt and tang had sapphires set in round baubles, but most amazing bit is where the hilt met the blade. Runic had crafted 2 crescent moons that looked like my cutie mark out of pale white stone and attached them. Holding the sword in my hoof, I marveled, Runic, this is a masterpiece. It was well balanced. I shifted it and took it in my mouth. Balance there, too. I set it back in the box carefully, turned to Runic and tackled him. It was cool. We're family. Stallions, I heard Iridescent say as she and the other mares exchanged gifts. I didn't care. This was amazing. I helped Runic up and asked, How'd you do it? It's perfect and just right for me. Runic smiled and shrugged. I'm friends with a blacksmith. We worked on it together. For all the experimenting you and I do, I was able to figure it out. I did the stones and imbuing. I'm glad you like it. I shook my head. No, I love it. Great! Runic cheered. I made a mental note to request special permission from the captain to carry non-issue weapons. It was a common request and one unlikely he'd deny. It was also just about that time that the front door opened and 2 of Princess Luna's house guards came in. Miley Hooves and Plaguebringer, or affectionate term for her, and her new partner Harvest Moon. Harvest was the 2nd trainee ever to come out of academy and go directly into Princess Luna's house guard. That was a good thing. Ponies were starting to see this as a good career move. Our group fell silent and I cleared my throat. Miley? Harvest? They both nodded at me, looking around, and separated to reveal Princess Una. She smiled brightly. Happy Hearth-Swimming Eve, every ponies! She exclaimed, coming in. Who is ready for the fun to be doubled? I have brought games. And she had 2 saddlebags full. I noticed that Velvet Step looked like a little shocked, but the rest of us knew this side of Princess Luna well. I remember thinking, tonight was in fact going to be the best night ever. Up until that point, I was right. Well, then I hope you guys have had a wunderbar day.